kicked you out like that. But it's Friday, Weekend Perspective with one and only Ken Gishinga. Ken, how's your week been?
It's been a good week, full of new announcements,
Yes.
full of very exciting information about Russia and Africa, Safaricom. So I think it's been, as an economist, it's been an exciting week.
Definitely, actually. And just before we go to specifics, you've just mentioned Russia, you've mentioned new announcements. What was your biggest surprise or your biggest takeaway, overall speaking?
Well, I think the Safaricom announcement was, in Kenya, by far the biggest announcement. Obviously, Safaricom is the top, most profitable company in East and Central Africa. So anybody who's at the helm of it, I think, draws a lot of curiosity. So I think it was good that finally they have put that to rest.
Yes.
And they have a substantive head.
Definitely.
And it's interesting to see what the road ahead lies for them.
Definitely. And talking of Safaricom, we want to see the new guy is going to be, CEO. Effective 1st April 2020, his profile, who is Peter Ndegwa. Now, Safaricom unveiled their new CEO, Peter Ndegwa, will be taking on the position from 1st April 2020. Here's his profile and his career trajectory. Okay, so there we see quite an impressive profile. Peter actually oversees operations. He has an experience of over 2 decades in matters, management. And right now, coming up from him, actually it was quite a surprise. A Kenyan at the helm of Safaricom. This was quite celebratory. And oftentimes in the business world, we don't think who is coming from where. We think about what are you able to deliver. Now, by the fact that this guy is Kenyan, does that add, I can't say salt to the injury, but sugar to the tea?
I think there was a level of excitement because Safaricom, as I said, draws a lot of attention. People like Mark Zuckerberg come from the States to come and see how M-Pesa is successful. So it draws a lot of global attention. So I think for a lot of people, given that the 2 predecessors were not Kenyan by birth, I think people always used to ask, when will there be an opportunity for a Kenyan? So I think it's a good thing. But I think one thing that people don't talk about is he's also coming from a different industry. He's coming from the fast-moving consumer goods industry, which was very different from his 2 predecessors, who were both telco, born and bred, if you like. I think there's less discussion on that second part, which I think is equally important.
Yeah, and that brings me to the question, it's coming from, quote unquote, the beer industry. Yes?
Right.
Yeah, and the predecessors, as you put earlier, they have a background in telecom. Yeah? So what should we expect?
Well, the positive side, sometimes they say when you bring somebody from a different industry, they come with a fresh pair of eyes, they come with a fresh mind, and they are able to bring innovation into the company. The downside to that is sometimes they lack the exposure. They don't know where the landmines are. They don't know where the bodies are buried in the industry, if you like. And sometimes that can become a challenge. So I think it's really waiting to see. And I like the fact that they gave his appointment date April 1st, which means he has a good 6 months to really ramp up on the industry dynamics. Who does what, who is important, what are the strategic decisions? Because Safaricom has some big decisions it needs to make. Its M-Pesa has been growing very successfully, but the voice market has been losing market share. Right now it's at an all-time low, I think at about 65%. So he needs to turn that quickly around, because if you start losing that market share at a quick rate, then even the secondary things like M-Pesa now will get affected. So I think those are the big strategic decisions that he really has to be able to deliver on.
Definitely. And 6 months is the time to catch up on that particular issue. But right now I want to shift gears onto something else. ABSA released the Africa Financial Index for the year 2019, sampling a total of 20 countries. The report saw South Africa maintain its top position as the most active and competitive financial market, with Kenya coming in 3rd.
There's been a great deal of work that's gone into trying to create that facilitative environment, introducing a broader spectrum of rules to facilitate new products to come to market. But we've continued to see a gap in the level of uptake. I think that's been driven by a mix of, there's been a level of overall macro issues that have affected uptake, certainly around very attractive risk-free rates from government really do have an adverse effect on how willing people are to come into the market to take up alternative products.
I don't think it's peculiar to Kenya because assessing markets across Africa, this is a very common scenario where you have a few big companies driving the turnover, driving the level of liquidity.
Okay, so the financial markets in Africa, the ranking of the 20 countries, we see Kenya maintaining third, South Africa still at the top. But from your assessment, the financials, how deep are they in Africa as we speak?
I mean, obviously, South Africa and Nigeria, the big boys of Africa, will always be at the top, not least because they are much bigger economies than Kenya. I think what gives Kenya an interesting juice is that it has a big innovation blend. Things like fintech are thriving faster in Kenya than in those bigger economies. So I think that is really what is giving Kenya that edge. But in terms of depth, I mean, the Nigerian bond market, for example, is much, much deeper than the Kenyan market. South Africa, the big 10, big 4 banks are much bigger than our industry collectively. But I think that innovation is really what attracts. So back to the question of Safaricom, the M-Pesas, if that innovation can continue, yes, it might be smaller compared to the bigger brothers of South Africa and Nigeria, but you'll still see a lot of FDI coming in.
Definitely.
Because FDI loves innovation.
Yeah, and speaking of the equity market, look at NSC, for example. Remove the banks, remove Safaricom, and we are left with a lot of questions right there. And Dundo argued that this is a trend across Africa. How can this be changed? Where is the money to put into these particular spaces?
As you said, it's all about the money and the liquidity. And for many times on this show, we've said the liquidity in the Kenyan economy has not been significant. And that's why you're not seeing sometimes stocks going to where they are because companies are not performing as well as they used to. So I think it's back to the question of cash flow in the economy. How do we boost cash flow so that industries do better, so that people want to buy stocks of those companies? That is a liquidity part that has to be, and that's a macro issue as one of the participants there talked about.
Definitely. Ken, I wish we would have more time to speak about